Hi, welcome to It's So Friday. Thanks for joining us on the first Friday in February. It's kind of rainy and gray outside today, and so we thought that we would start working today with our London Calling prints, which are shipping to stores now. This is our cotton lung collection featuring a lot of really happy bright florals and some other fun designs. There are 29 different fabrics in 8 different designs, and there's also a really fun border print. So just to give you like a quick feel, you can't actually feel through the screen, which is too bad because it's really, really soft, but to give you an idea of how drapey and wonderful it is, like just, you can kind of see how nicely it moves when you play with it a bit. What we hear a lot is that our core audience is quilters, but it seems like a lot of the folks that also follow our page are really interested in the idea of making their own clothes. And often they're a little concerned about where they should start or how they should go about doing it. And you see all these really beautiful garments and you want to make those for yourself. So we thought to start the show, we'd show you some really beautiful, impressive garments using some of our London Calling prints. The first one is this Negroni top. It's a ladies' top, clearly with all the pretty florals, and it's a button up, and so you use a lot of different skills here, including plackets for the wrist and buttons, and it's really great and hard. And the next one, which is a little bit easier but still challenging, uses the border print and is this really sweet little birthday party dress for little girls. It has this little like ruffle sleeve. And these dresses and garments, they're so pretty, but you're sitting there going, okay, but I've never made a garment before, so what am I supposed to do with this? So our project today is a really quick, easy introductory garment, perfect for first-time garment sewers, and it's a free tutorial on our blog, or pattern on our blog. It's designed by Sonia Phillip of 100 Acts of Sewing, and it is titled The Simple Skirt. So if you go to the link in this post, or just search on the Robert Kaufman website for the simple skirt, you're going to see a project with a picture of the 3 skirts lined up. And this pattern is for a fully lined skirt with an elastic waistband, which means that you don't need to learn how to do any zippers or anything like that, but you get a really great garment that looks really impressive, really beautiful, and that you can make pretty quickly. So first things first, when you download your pattern, you're going to have to tape together your pattern pieces so that you have the templates that you need to cut out the pieces for your skirt. And there is a lining piece and the skirt body piece, and you'll notice that the lining piece is several inches shorter than the body piece, and that's so that when you're wearing the skirt you don't see the lining hanging out underneath, longer than the main fabric that you've picked. Once you pick your fabric, you're going to cut out 2 pieces of your outside fabric and 2 pieces of your lining. And the instructions say on the pattern piece, you'll see there's a little arrow and it says fold. So if you've never done a garment before, that means that you're just folding your fabric in half, lining this pattern piece up against that fold, and then cutting around it, which then when you open it, gives you a larger pattern piece without all the headache. So you should have 4 pieces when you're ready to start sewing. All right. So the first things that you're going to do is you're going to be kind of repeating the same steps on your outside piece and your lining piece. I'm just going to move this fabric. You'll also need some elastic. So the pattern requires 1-inch elastic, and I only had 2-inch elastic, and that's okay. So what I did was I folded it in half, and then I used a zigzag stitch to sew it on each side so that it stayed in place, because at the end it'll be pulled tight, so it's not going to matter that it's like kind of crazy right now. The zigzag stitch allows it to still stretch. If I were to sew it with a straight stitch, it would lose that stretch. So if you are kind of winging it and using wider elastic than you need for the pattern, it's okay, use a zigzag stitch. All right, so first things first, you'll know the top of your main pattern because there's this long line and the bottom kind of flares out. Also, if you have a pattern piece and you line it up, all the words go one direction, and that's the top. First step is to line your pieces right sides together, and you're just going to sew along the side seams using a 1/2-inch seam allowance. So I'm going to move my, whoa, what did I just do? All right. I'm going to move my needle into the 1/2-inch position here, and then I'm going to sew along the one side and then on the other side. And just remember to back tack a little bit when you start and stop a seam, so that it doesn't come unraveled. Now, the pattern says to finish your seams as desired, so you can serge the pieces if you have a serger, if you don't have a serger and you just want to zigzag, and you can either press the seams open or closed. It's important on this kind of skirt to finish your seams, because if you don't, what's going to happen is that as soon as you put it in the wash, your fabric will start to fray a bit, and you don't want that to happen. So right now I'm just going to zigzag the stitches together, because when I piece this, I'm not going to press my seams open, just because, you know, then I would have to finish each individual seam instead of just finishing that once. So for the sake of this video, I'm just going to do this one at a time. All right. So now on one side, I have a 1/2 inch seam allowance and a zigzag finished edge, which means those seams aren't going to unravel. And now I'm going to repeat that process on the other side. Okay. And if you want to pin, if you are a pinner, definitely feel free to pin along this long seam as you piece it. It'll keep it from slipping and sliding. The nice thing about working with London Calling is, whoa, gotta go back to my not zigzag needle position. The nice thing about working with London Calling is that it's not as shifty as if you were sewing with a rayon or a silk, something that's really going to move around a lot. It can still help to pin it, but you still have a little bit more control over this even if you don't pin. Whereas like when I've sewn with rayon or a silk, it's all over the place and you really have to pin to get your pieces to line up straight. All right, and just come back. And then I'm going to go back to my zigzag and finish that seam. And again, I know it might seem repetitive to go and zigzag over a seam that you just finished, but it's really worth it, especially if you want this garment to be one that you can throw in the washer and dryer and use for a long, long time. All right. So here we have our first finished piece. So it's the two pieces right side together with the sewn seam and the finished seams on both sides. And now we're just going to set that aside and repeat the exact same process with our lining. And so with our lining, we are using a Cambridge, which is just a really nice, solid, kind of a similar weight to the London Calling. And so it drapes really nicely as well and works exceptionally well as linings with these types of garments. Go. Repeating the exact same process again. Okay. I'm just going to sew this other side and then finish my seams, because otherwise I have to keep switching back and forth between my zigzag stitch and then I forget to turn my zigzag stitch off.
Oh no.
It's a struggle. And just making sure that my seams are lining up nicely. Okay. And now to zigzag again.
Do you like zigzagging?
What?
Do you like zigzagging?
It's kind of fun. That gives you a headache. Don't do that. Zigzag the other seam.
Ooh.
All right, so now you have your lining piece and it's zigzagged, and you can see the stitching a little bit better here with the gray thread. We're using Aurifil 40 weight thread with the lawn weights. That seems to work well. You can always use a polyester thread too if you want. Kind kind of up to you. The next step on this process is to turn the top edge of your skirt, so what'll go around your waist, out a 1/4 inch and press. So you're going to want to turn this down along the entire side, and it's a little finicky, but it's okay. And if you're pressing your seams one way, just make sure that you're being consistent in which direction you're pushing them. And I'm just going to real quick go over here and do this iron, and this is kind of a weird way to do it. Like, just feels odd, but you'll see why. It's great. Okay, so I'm just gonna iron real quick. Maybe the front and then the back. And what this piece is doing is you'll end up turning this under, and it makes it so that you won't have an exposed seam on the inside. So even though it's a little finicky, just take your time, and it'll end up looking really nice, and you'll be really happy with how it turns out. So if you have a seam guide, like there's a metal one where you can kind of line up and make sure you're getting exactly that 1/4 inch. Right now I'm just kind of eyeballing it. I sew a lot though, so I'm pretty good at guessing my 1/4 inch-ish. Yeah. And let's see, I press my seam this way, so I want to press my other seam going this direction. Okay, we're almost done. Okay, so that was stressful, but we've got it. Okay, so then you'll see that you have this this piece of fabric that's attached and has the 1/4 inch. Now the next thing you have to do is actually to turn again and press, and this time you want to turn under about an additional 1.25 inches. So it should be about this, so 1.5 inches total off the top. And this one is actually a little bit easier to do the entire thing at once, and then just press. Make sure that it's all lined up. Okay, so now that you've got this like very impressive fold thing going on, you're gonna unfold it. And you have that crease still. And now leave this piece with the wrong sides out, and you're going to take your lining and turn that one so that you see the finished seams on the, so the seams are on the inside, so it's now right sides out. And then with wrong sides together, you're just going to put this skirt lining around your skirt. So kind of putting the whole thing in. And so what you're doing is you're getting ready to attach the lining to the body of the skirt. Okay, so now that you've kind of got this thing going, what you're going to do is you want to line up the tops of your lining fabric about 3/8 of an inch underneath that pressed second folding line. So not the 1/4 inch one, but the one that's 1.5 inches down. You're going to line that up about 3/8 of an inch from the bottom there. And it says in the instructions to baste it all the way around, which is really, really helpful because it keeps it from shifting. But I'm going to skip that step for now because it's kind of frustrating to unpin it later. So if you were doing this at home and want to baste it in, then once you get this all lined up and you pin all the way around, go ahead and use the largest or widest stitch length in your machine and baste it all the way around, and you'll take that stitch out later. What I'm going to do is just being really careful to line it up about 3/8 of an inch. I'm going to keep that 1/4 inch turned over, and then I'm going to fold over again on the 1.5 inches, and I'm going to pin the whole thing in place there. And I'm going to do a whole bunch of pinning. And so that's going to it's going to leave the lining inside the waistband and keep it nicely encased. And I'm going to do this all the way around. Again, just making sure that the top of the lining is about 3/8 of an inch from that fold line, and then folding over and pinning. And you're just repeating this all the way around. At this point, at the bottom, you'll see that it's about 1/2 inch of lining. The lining is about 1/2 inch higher than the outside piece of your fabric. You should actually, I started in the middle, which was silly. You should start at one of the seams and make sure that your seam is going the direction you want it to be going, because otherwise your seam will just be weird. You won't be able to see the inside seam, but you'll know. If it doesn't bother you, it doesn't bother me. With garments, I'm very much it's finished and it fits, so it's great. And I feel like if you've worked at a garment and you get it to fit, then it's great. But see, since I didn't start at a seam, now I have this weird thing, so I'm actually going to go back and repin this so that it's accurate, because I don't want it to be kind of weird. Okay. And I'm pinning right along the bottom because there's only that 1/4 inch lip to turn under. So if you pin too high, then it's not going to catch that extra 1/4 inch fold that you have down there that you want to keep nice and tidy, just keeping you from having a raw edge along the waistband.
Nicole has asked if you have to use a special needle when sewing cotton on, or what kind of needle do you use?
I just use a regular needle. If Nicole knows something else about
Not
needles.
this Nicole.
Oh.
Another Nicole.
I thought this Nicole was asking. I was like, I don't know. I use a regular universal needle. The only time I would really change my needle for a garment is if I was sewing like a denim or something that needed, that was like thicker, or if I was working with a jersey, then I would use a ballpoint needle. But for this, I use my regular universal needle and I just make sure it's sharp. Yeah. I thought that was a trick question. Okay. I was like, maybe Nicole knows. I don't know. Nicole knows a different thing. Nicole's sewn more garments, so I think that she has a... Okay. Okay. And so this pinning takes a little bit of time. I would be doing this even if I had basted. It just would have been another step too, so just for the sake of the video, I kept out the basting. The pins are taking their place. And you can see that the lining is staying nicely where I've pinned it, because I'm pinning it to within 1 inch of its life. Okay. So right now, what we have is a pinned all the way around piece where you see the lining, you see the outside piece at the top band, and then at the very bottom, you see just about 1/2 inch of the main fabric. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew, see if you can see this, I'm going to sew all the way around, just almost to the edge, so that I'm making sure if you sew too far away, you're not going to catch that 1/4 inch that you turned under. So make sure that you're sewing close to the edge, and I'm going to leave about a 2 inch opening, which is where we're going to insert our elastic. Now keep in mind, right now this skirt is considerably larger than the waist you'd want to wear it on, but that's okay because elastic tightens everything up. All right. And for this, I'm going to take out this little portion of my machine so that I can use the free arm, and it makes it really easy to sew in a big loop. And many sewing machines have this kind of feature. This is the Janome 8900, and has that nice removable piece. Okay. And while I'm thinking about this, I'm gonna make sure I'm not on a zigzag stitch. Okay, and now I'm just going to start, and I'm going to take a few stitches back and then sew all the way around in one big circle. Okay. I pinned kind of the opposite direction. Normally you would want to pin so that you could pull your pins out towards you. I pinned backwards. All my pins are like heading towards my machine. I'm like, oh. And you want to be careful as you do this that the fabric from the skirt doesn't sneak its way in and actually get stitched into your waistband, because that would be a bummer. trying not to get out your seam ripper. It's kind of frustrating. It happens though, so just, you know, take it slow. Alright, and I passed my second side seam, which means I'm coming up on my original stitch, and so I'm just going to leave a couple inches here, and then back stitch, and cut. So now what I have is, I have this space here that I can put my fingers in, but then other than that, it's encased. And so at this point, you take your elastic, and you take like a big safety pin, which, there it is, big safety pin. And you put your big safety pin through your elastic, and you're going to use this to pull your elastic through the skirt. Now mine is a little crazy because it was, like I said, folded over and twisted in half. If you're just working with regular 1-inch elastic, it won't be so so all over the place with going in circles like that, so you won't have that to worry about. But you do want to make sure that you don't twist your elastic, otherwise when you're wearing your skirt, you're going to be able to feel that the elastic is bent over, and that's just like personal preference. I guess if it doesn't bug you, it's okay, but I think it's kind of annoying. So, and you're just going to gently pull your elastic through. Now be careful that you don't just pull it through too fast, because this elastic is much smaller than the skirt that it's going on right now, so you are going to need to make sure that you don't lose the tail when you're guiding your elastic through, because that would be easy to do. Okay, and so what we're doing is we're just creeping this along like a couple inches, and then gently guiding the fabric down. Be careful not to just pull too hard. You don't want to rip your fabric or anything, or your stitches, just from a really aggressive elastic encasing encounter. Be strange. All right. So and if you don't pull the fabric down, what happens is it gets all bunched up in one spot, and then it's hard to move the elastic further through the skirt. We're getting close to the end, like I can see the end in sight, so almost there. Okay, so here we go. Okay. All right, and the elastic is through. Okay. Now, at this point, what you're going to do is you're going to sew your elastic ends together like this, and then stretch the skirt out along the elastic and finish up that seam. If you were making it for yourself, what you'd want to do is you'd want to stitch and then test it, but before you close everything up, you'd want to make sure that it sits nicely where you want it to. But I think it'll fit like this, so I'm just going to sew with a 1/2-inch seam allowance. And sew all my elastic, and it's kind of tough, but all right. So now my elastic is stitched together, and we're just gonna kind of convince it to go through the rest of this. Okay. And so what you get, and I think I have a twist. Drat, I have a twist. Maybe. I do. I have a twist in my elastic. So you can kind of see that there's like a crazy thing happening here, which means I had to fix that. So I'm going to figure out where the sewed together piece went. And I'm going to get my seam ripper, because that's my favorite sewing tool. I spend a lot of time with my seam ripper. I don't know about everyone else, but I feel like I'm not alone in this. Okay. It's kind of hard to seam rip through elastic, especially since I went through and went back and forth a bunch of times. But it worked. All right, so let me be more careful this time. Let me figure out what I did. Okay, there was the twist. There we go. Okay. This time there will be no twist. All right. It's kind of good that happened. Then you can see what you do. How you know when it's wrong.
You did that on purpose, right?
What?
You did that on purpose, right?
Oh yeah, it's planned.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And so now you have this really great elastic waist, but you have this hole. So what you're going to do is you're going to stretch this out like it was straight again, and you're just going to finish that seam. It's a little trickier now that you have the elastic in there, because the elastic of course wants to stretch out and hang out, but you got to do this first. Okay, so sewing along and just pull that seam straight. And you know, even if it bunches up just a little bit, as long as it's on the inside, no one's really going to see it. It's okay. All right. Now, it's always good to do that on a seam because, I mean, if you're looking really carefully, I just lost it. But, see, if you're looking really carefully on the other side, you can kind of see where the extra stitches went back and forth. But this is kind of a busy print, so it doesn't really matter. So now at this point, if I'm looking at it, I have this very impressive, cute little skirt with an elastic waist, but my seams aren't finished at the ends. So all you have to do now is hem the bottom. And so the pattern calls for you to turn it under a quarter and then another quarter, and that's really hard for me to do here on camera, so I'm just going to kind of turn it under maybe like a little more than a quarter or a half. The amount you hem it is going to just take away that much from the length of the skirt. So if you want a longer skirt, it might be better to add some fabric to the length when you are cutting your pattern piece. But if you like this length, then by all means keep going like this. And we're just gonna real quick, and I'm not using like a foot that turns this under. If you have one, that would probably make this loads easier. And I'm also not really sure that I'm getting a perfect quarter inch. I'm just kind of eyeballing it, which is honestly how I do most of my hems, and they maybe don't come out exactly the same length or the same size everywhere, but overall it's like pretty consistent, so I'm calling that a win, and it works, so I keep doing it. All right, I'm just kind of nudging that fabric in line so that you don't have any raw edges peeking out, and just continuing this all the way around. And when you're doing this, especially with a hem, just be patient. It can take a little bit of time to get all the way around a garment, but if you try and rush it, like, you'll end up having little bits that aren't quite caught in the hem, and then you just have to take it all out and redo it, and it's kind of frustrating. So just a little bit at a time, and you'll get there, and it'll be perfect, and you'll be really, really happy, and you'll have a garment you get to wear. And I only work maybe about like 8 or 9 inches away from my needle, and just guide that much in at a time, and then I stop and get the next few inches ready. That way I can kind of control exactly where the fabric is going, without the hem getting too big or too small. Right, and we're almost finished with the outside edge. End is in sight. Really close. And once you get back to where you started, just go back a few stitches and you're done. So now you've hemmed the outside edge. It looks beautiful. You're so excited. You still need to hem the inside. Don't forget. When you're trying to decide which way to hem it, you're looking for your raw exposed edges, and you're going to turn it towards that and then towards that again. Okay, and on the lining, I'm always okay with making it a little bit more of a generous hem, just because no one sees the lining anyway, so I'm just, yeah, doing like almost a 1/2 inch turn. Maybe not quite, maybe like 3/8 and then 3/8. All the way around, and if you see any like flyaway threads coming from the hem, I just tuck them into the hem so that they're not sticking out at the bottom of your skirt. And And when you get to your seams, I press to one side, so I'm looking at what direction the seams are attached up here, and then making sure that the bottoms are also going the same direction. And that'll keep you from having a weird, like, twisting seam in the side of your skirt. Okay. We've got about half of the skirt still to hem. We're almost there. That even if you decide to use a small hem here that's only like a 1/4 inch or something, the same as the front of the skirt, it's okay, you still won't see it because the whole pattern piece is cut shorter than the body of the skirt, or the exterior body of the skirt. The great thing about a self-lined skirt is that you can use more of a sheer fabric and you won't be able to see through it in the sunlight. So now you've hemmed 2 different things. They're attached in the middle and there's no encased seams, and you have a cute little skirt here. If you are really excited and make one up and want to share it, just tag Robert Kaufman on Instagram or Facebook. If you've mastered this and you want to take a next step, you could always try adding some pockets or doing French seams, all kinds of extra things that you can take to really modify this little skirt and make it your own. Thanks for joining us for It's So Friday. I guess I can real quick just show you all the rest of the prints in our London Calling group. So you've obviously seen this one, which is our really fun pastel floral. We also have this really amazing pear fabric. So like I said, some like fun prints too. I love these funny little fruits. We have this floral, which is a really fun surprise because hiding in the flowers, we have these little kitten faces smiling back at us. We have a really sweet bow print that's a mix of bows with little butterflies. And the little polka dot bows are all really cute too. This is the border print that you may recognize from that cute dress that we showed you. So you can see how it translated from just a regular border print to this really cute little dress, and using the border kind of creatively in your garment. This is not the same one. This is the same one that we worked with, but it's so different just with coloring. So you can see there's a lot of different color options, kind of for every kind of taste. Another really beautiful floral, and this comes in multiple colors as well. And then there's this really fun tonal kind of blobby floral garden as well.
Blobby floral garden.
Well, with that, that's all we have for today. Thanks for joining us for It's So Friday. We'll see you next week.